Before we get started, there are 5 questions you should be able to answer by the end of this lesson. Question 1, why is lording over others contrary to kingdom principles? Why is lording over others contrary to kingdom principles? Why is lording over others contrary to kingdom principles? Question 2, why must believers examine ambition, pride, and vanity? Why must believers examine ambition, pride, and vanity? Why must believers examine ambition, pride, and vanity? Question 3, how did Jesus define his jurisdiction in Matthew chapter 15, verse 24? How did Jesus define his jurisdiction in Matthew chapter 15, verse 24? How did Jesus define his jurisdiction in Matthew chapter 15, verse 24? Question 4, why is understanding your God-given assignment important? Why is understanding your God-given assignment important? Why is understanding your God-given assignment important? And lastly, question 5, what happens when your ambition exceeds God's assigned jurisdiction for your life? What happens when your ambition exceeds God's assigned jurisdiction for your life? What happens when your ambition exceeds God's assigned jurisdiction for your life? Now, let's dive into the lesson.
Thanks for joining us and listening to another God-lived and God-breathed message by Darius Nelms. Our mission is to increase our generation standard back to God's standard of excellence and kingdom living through personal development, relational wisdom, business management, and faith increase. Our aim is that this message inspires and infuses you to reach your next level of living and helps you discover your rightful place in God's kingdom. Now, let's dive into the message.
Welcome to another episode of Think Tank Tuesday. This is episode 54, where we meet every other Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time to explore the mind of God, the ideas of God, and the principles and precepts of God. I want to start with Mark chapter 10, verses 42 through 45, Amplified Edition. Mark chapter 10, verses 42 through 45. It says, calling them to himself, Jesus said to them, you know that those who are recognized as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them. Emphasis. And their powerful men exercise authority over them, tyrannizing them. Verse 43 says, but this is not how it is among you. Jesus is drawing a line in the sand. Instead, whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first and most important among you must be a slave to all. Verse 45, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. And so I want to touch on this point that Jesus tempers the taste of the original command of dominion. See, we read about dominion in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, and we know that entire groups of people have taken that verse out of context and has exploited people. They have dominated people in a way that God never said. They've done everything to wear out that verse in negative fashion. And so Jesus tempers the taste of the original commandment of dominion. And that dominion was never a command to lord over others. But in relation to God's kingdom, the world operates in a spirit of dominion that emphasizes those who think that they are superior, that they subjugate those who they feel are inferior. See, that's how the world operates. The world operates in the spirit of dominion. And in that spirit of dominion, they emphasize those who think that they are superior. And if they think that they are superior, then they will subjugate those who they feel are inferior. And so the pretext of this particular verse was also a correction of the mindset that we should have as it pertains to the degree of glory that the Lord will allow us to experience on earth. And so there are 3 things that we need to be aware of if we are to be in God's kingdom. 3 things. And understanding these 3 things goes to the pretext of the verse that I just read, and I'm going to go to it now because I don't want to give you these 3 points without giving it to you. Let's go to Mark chapter 10. And media, make sure you follow along with me so that we can put this on the screen. Mark chapter 10. Let's start with verses, let's start with verse 35, okay? And we'll read down. It says, then John and James, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. What do you want me to do for you? He asked. They replied, let one of us sit at your right hand and the other at your left in your glory. See? Verse 38, you don't know what you are asking. Jesus said, can you drink the cup that I drink or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. And of course, when the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. And then that's when we get to verse 42. So that's the pretext of the main verse for tonight. And so we see in Mark chapter 10, verses 35 through 41, that we have to have a correct mindset as it pertains to the degree of glory that the Lord will allow us to experience. Jesus made that clear. When we read Mark chapter 10, verses 35 through 41, and we emphasize, verse 40, it says, but to sit at my right or left, it's not for me to grant. It's not for me to grant. That's the emphasis. And so Jesus is correcting the mindset. Jesus is correcting the mindset that we should have. And the mindset that we should have is that God determines the degree of glory that he will allow us to experience. That he will allow us to experience. And so based on Mark chapter 10, verses 35 through 45, there are 3 things that we need to always be aware of if we are to be in God's kingdom. 1 is our ambition. Okay, 1 is our ambition. Number 2 is our pride. We need to be very, very aware of our pride. Number 3, we need to be aware of our vanity. Okay, these are the 3 things that we need to be aware of and that we're going to talk about in detail tonight. We need to first be aware of our ambition. Secondly, we need to be aware of our pride. And thirdly, we need to be aware of our vanity. Ambition, pride, and vanity. Ambition, pride, and vanity. And so now the question is, how do these things show up in the church? You know, how does it show up in your personal life? Because these things are necessary to examine. Number 1, your ambition. See, your ambition is your desire for more. Your ambition is your strive for greater. And this piece is important because we have to align our desire for more and greater with what God wants for us at any given time. See, from season to season, it may differ. There are seasons where we may be prosperous and where we may have plenty, and there may be seasons where we may not have as much as we had before. But we have to make sure that we align our desire for more and even for greater with what God desires for us at any given time and season. See, we have to ensure that we are covering the territory and that we are within the jurisdiction that God has called us to at any given time. See, God may call us out to go out into the world. Then he may call us back to retreat, to experience a desert-like experience. We have to be aware of what God has called us to for any given time. Matthew chapter 15, verse 24, NLT version, it says, then Jesus said to the woman, talking to the Canaanite woman, I was only sent to help God's lost sheep, the people of Israel. Now we know that Jesus ended up helping this woman, right? But he made it abundantly clear, and I want to read it out of the Amplified edition as well, that he answered, I was commissioned. See, I was commissioned by God and sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. So he ends up helping this Canaanite woman because of her faith. He went outside of his jurisdiction because Jesus is God and that's his prerogative and that's his right. But Jesus made it very clear that I was sent only to help God's lost sheep. There will be other people that are going to be able to help you, but I'm still going to help you in this time. But Jesus was making it clear about jurisdiction. He was making it clear about who he was sent to help, who he was sent to call back home, right? And I've taught this to you in another think tank about how God discipled, he commissioned, he called other disciples to help other groups of people, right? This God of the universe, this Jesus, had limitations. That's a strong argument. That's a strong argument. Again, we see throughout scripture that he went beyond his jurisdiction, but again, he is God. So that's his prerogative. That's his right. That's not wise for us to do. That's not wise for us to do. But Jesus made it clear in Matthew chapter 15, verse 24, who his focus was on. Yes, he was going to bear the sins of the world, but his focus was on the lost sheep of Israel. He was commissioned to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And so Jesus stated his jurisdiction. He stated his territory. Now we know as God, again, on a case-by-case basis, when faith was exercised, that he was willing to go beyond his said limitations. However, the message and the focus of Jesus, again, was clear: the lost sheep of Israel. Whatever you do, the question is, are you within the scope of your commission, or are you coloring outside of the lines? That's the question for you. Whatever you do, are you within the scope of your commission, or are you coloring outside of the lines? Are you tempted to blur the lines? Number two, be careful when your ambition is bigger than your jurisdiction. See, this takes clarity of calling. Clarity in what God has called you to. See, if you are unclear, don't go making up something. If you are unclear of your God assignment, if you are unclear of what God is calling you to, don't go making up something. Sit still and wait. If you are not certain of your calling, don't go manufacturing things. Don't go making up things. If you are unclear about your calling, don't go making something up. You have to make sure and be careful that your ambition is not bigger than your jurisdiction. Because again, don't go manufacturing your own results. You have to be clear and definitive of God's calling on your life. You have to be able to define what God has placed you on earth for and what he placed you on earth to do. And within that, is your jurisdiction local, city to city? Is it national? Is it, bordering states? Is it national or even global, international coverage? Define your jurisdiction and where God has you now. Determine where God has you now. Because pride is known as the pride of life. And see, your pride is your pretentiousness. And see, this is a deep one because pride is anti-faith. Pride robs you of eternal glory. Pride is concerned with your earthly comfort through wealth and materialism. And your pride is concerned with your worldly achievement. It's a boastful exaltation of yourself, all of which is carnal and appeases the flesh, because pride is the sin that causes many people to do Pride is the sin that causes many people to do character-shattering things. Pride is the sin that causes many people to do character-shattering things. So Jesus says the second Adam resists the pride of life in Matthew chapter 4, verses 8 through 11. In the NIV version, it says, again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. All of this I will give you, he said, if you will bow down and worship me. Jesus said to him, verse 11, away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Then the devil left him and the angels came and attended him. And so we have to be careful when we are attracted to materialism. That seems so harmless, right? We all want better. We all want to live in a better house. We want to live in a house rather than a shack. We want to live in a house where the framing is all put together and not where we just live in and water can seep in. Like we want the material things that make life pleasant, that makes life better, that makes life more enjoyable, that makes life feel good. We want those things, but again, we have to be careful when we are attracted to materialism. Because is prosperity and materialism bad? No. But here's the secret hack about prosperity and materialism. It was never meant to be enjoyed apart from God. The secret hack about prosperity and materialism is that it was never meant to be enjoyed and experienced apart from God. Had Jesus bowed down to Satan, for which was already his in his earthly framework, Jesus would have separated himself from God for the pursuit of prosperity and materialism. Because being in the kingdom, we don't necessarily talk about prosperity because Jesus never did. Don't you miss that. See, in the kingdom, we don't talk about prosperity because Jesus never did. See, in Christianity, you could talk about prosperity, right? In Christianity, you could talk about prosperity. Every week, you could talk about prosperity. But in the kingdom, we don't talk about prosperity because Jesus never did. Because prosperity is a byproduct and a feature of the kingdom. But it wasn't designed to be explored, experienced, embodied, or even enjoyed apart from God himself. So the pride of life will lead you to enjoy prosperity apart from God. It will cause you to delay God and to expedite yourself. The pride of life will lead you to enjoy prosperity apart from God. And it will cause you to delay God and to expedite yourself. Because in today's generation, many feel deserving and entitled to a depth of prosperity and a wealth of materialism. And so my caution to you is to tread lightly and to be careful. Don't fall into enemy territory. Because we see the pride of life taking place in the beginning. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 6, it says, when the woman saw the fruit of the tree was good, when she saw that the fruit was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took it and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. See, what she saw satisfied the flesh. It was aesthetically pleasing to the eye, and it would expedite her mental faculty. And so this is how you gauge if you are being lured into enemy territory with the pride of life. It's what you see satisfying your flesh, is what you see aesthetically pleasing to the eye, and is it expediting your mental faculty to soothe your intellect? That's why the Bible says in the New Testament that those who consider themselves wise must be a fool first. Number 3, last but not least, be careful of becoming vain. Because in the Old Testament, vanity is considered meaningless. Becoming vain is usually rooted in insecurity. And so it's usually a sense of an inflated ego. And so here is vanity in action. Saying that you're richer than you've ever been, but you're spiritually poor. You're spiritually bankrupt. See, vanity is having things, but your life is void of quality. You have things, but you have no quality friendships. You have things, but you have no quality spiritual substance. Because vanity is prosperity and materialism apart from God. Vanity is prosperity and materialism apart from God. And the Bible teaches us that this is meaningless. It's fleeting and that it holds no value. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verses 1 through 2 and verses 12 through 14. New King James Version says, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of all vanities, says the preacher. Vanities of all vanities. All is vanity. Verses 12 through 14 says, I, the preacher, was king of Israel in Jerusalem, and I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all the things under heaven, this burdensome task that God has given to the sons of man, by which they may be exercised. Verse 14, I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and indeed, all is vanity and grasping for the wind. And so I want to use this example that Michael Jackson was a global icon. Before social media, he had reach and he had pull. Michael had $500 million net worth, yet he was lonely. A great person void of quality relationship with his father, right? He was a great person, void of a quality relationship with his father. A great person, but void of people who could meet Michael on a human level. And I'm not saying that Michael was vain, because he wasn't. Not from what we could see, at least. But I'm just saying that no matter how much fluff you have, it doesn't fill the void of your life and your soul. And so be careful in your growing status that you don't get finagled into thinking it means something, because I'm here to tell you, friends, it doesn't. Thank you so much for joining in with me for this Think Tank Tuesday, episode 54. If this lesson was a help to you, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Share with a family member or a friend. Until next time, friends, peace.
May the Lord bless you, keep you, and make his face shine upon you. As we abide in his grace, presence, and peace, remember that you are an agent of change wherever your feet shall tread. Thanks for listening to this message and for the opportunity to teach and lead you. Until next time.